Mr. Chairman, Vice President, Prime Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman and friends, can I first thank you for that very warm welcome. And I'd also like to thank you, Mr. Vice President, for being our host at this dinner tonight with your usual charm and distinction. From whatever part of the world we come, from whatever country, whatever continent, we all feel that in you we have a particular friend in Washington, someone who knows our countries, someone whose great experience of government brings an instinctive and sympathetic understanding to our problems, and someone who shares, and more importantly, fights for our ideals. Thank you very much for being our host this evening. It is, of course, Vice President, as you mentioned, a great sadness that the President couldn't be with us this evening. I know that he wouldn't easily be kept away from this, the first meeting of our International Democratic Union in the United States. But nothing is more important than that he should continue his phenomenal recovery and come back fitter and stronger than ever to give us his leadership. Our message to him and to the First Lady is, you have all our affection and our best wishes. And if I may exploit one of an old actor's best-known lines, don't win this one just for the Gipper, Mr. President, win it for all of us. To hold this conference in the United States of America is a very special experience for all representatives. Many of us come from countries whose people left our shores to come to yours. It was just over 400 years ago that Sir Walter Raleigh helped to found the first English-speaking settlement in the North American continent. For him and his companions, and so many like them, America was a land of liberty and opportunity, a land of new beginnings. It has remained so across the centuries. In that time, people from many countries have followed. Some have sought and found an escape from tyranny. Others, like Raleigh himself, have sought adventure and the chance to make their fortune. But to them all, the United States has extended a warm and generous welcome, a welcome vividly caught by words inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. And for a moment, Mr. Allen, when you presented that to Mr. Mock and said you were going to read the inscription at the base, I thought you'd taken my line. You read the inscription to Mr. Mock, but I love the inscription on that statue. It expresses something for everyone who loves liberty, something to everyone who understands the wonderful position of America as the very land of liberty. I'm not going to read all the lines, just 4 of them. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Those words mean almost as much to me as they do to everyone in the United States of America. For the United States is still the land of liberty. But more than that, you have flourished because from your early days, liberty, of which so many people speak, but they do not go on to the rest, liberty has been indissolubly linked with responsibility, with endeavor, and with self-reliance. And it is that linkage which is important, because liberty and responsibility are two sides of the same coin, and you cannot have one without the other. Nor would you have survived those early days without giving a helping hand to one another, accepting that success brought not greater privilege, but greater obligations. These values, which we all share and admire, you enshrined in that most marvelous expression of liberty, the Declaration of Independence. And it's my great pride that a good deal of it was drafted by someone who had his origins in my country. We must recall these things as we meet here and relearn their lessons. First, that those who would enjoy the fruits of liberty must first assume its obligations. Have we not all heard politicians, or not of our own way of thought, but those others, conveying the impression that somehow the standard of living comes from governments and not from personal effort, and that somehow someone else will pay for all the good things for which electors are invited to vote? It was George Bernard Shaw who said, "Freedom incurs responsibility. That is why so many men fear it." And that is why I stress so much that freedom and responsibility are linked as they are in this country. And a second lesson we must constantly keep before us is that democracy is about more than the rule of the majority. Even majorities could be wrong if they didn't accept some more fundamental values than merely the rule of the majority. And it is a recognition and an acceptance that everyone has a basic right to freedom and justice, a right which is God-given and not state-given, a right so fundamental that no mere government is entitled to take it away. That is the bedrock of democracy. And that is why it has sometimes been difficult to export to other countries, because they have taken the form and the institutions of democracy, but have not taken the substance which underlies it. And that is why we are meeting here today, as we talk about contemporary problems against the background of these fundamental values built through the ages. Liberty has brought not only dignity, but prosperity undreamed of by our forefathers. And it is that which has enabled the West to bring hope and help to millions of starving African citizens who are now suffering famine. No shadow of complacency occupies our minds as we dine here tonight in the same world. But we are proud to live in a society which can keep food flowing to those stricken areas, and proud that our young people used their freedom in a concert you saw a few days ago in Live Aid to raise millions of dollars for humanity. Tackling famine in the world is a great challenge. So too is the maintenance of peace. All of us have very much in mind the importance of the summit meeting which will take place at the end of November between the President and Mr. Gorbachev. We must not underestimate the changes which are taking place in the Soviet Union. A younger generation has made its way into the seats of power, a generation that is more highly educated, which has a more sophisticated understanding of the importance of image and presentation, We've seen it in Mr. Gorbachev's walkabouts. We've seen it in the greater use of press conferences and briefings, although always for highly selected information. We've heard talk of economic reform. These new techniques are bound to be employed this autumn in a massive propaganda offensive aimed at public opinion in our countries. Would that we could get through as easily to public opinion in theirs. But our peoples will be presented with the alluring prospect of large reductions in nuclear weapons, of a stable peace just round the corner, will say the Soviets, if only, they will say, if only the United States were to give up the SDI, if only Britain and France were to abandon their nuclear deterrence, even though they're only a tiny proportion of Soviet forces, if only we were to accept Soviet proposals which would preserve and guarantee Soviet superiority in numbers, if only, in other words, we accept the Soviet view and give up our own. That we will not do. It will be our task to keep our people aware of the realities. The reality that the nature of communism has not changed, even if its image has been touched up. The reality that the new brooms in the Soviet Union will not be used to sweep away communism, only to make it more efficient, if that can be done. The reality that the defense of the West for many years will continue to depend upon deterrence through nuclear weapons. The reality that those who are now in leading positions in the Soviet Union have never known anything but communism. They do not think in any other terms. Their view of the world will remain dominated by their ideology. But, Mr. Chairman, it won't be enough just to warn against siren voices. We must have a positive approach, firm, clear, and constructive proposals of our own, as the President has, for substantial reductions in nuclear weapons, for a ban on chemical weapons, and for increasing East-West contacts, and explaining our proposals to our people in terms which will carry conviction and appeal. We must show that our commitment to negotiation, our commitment to peace, is more honest and more credible than the specious proposals of the other side. Our parties, members of the IDU, will have a special responsibility in this. Mr. Chairman, at this conference, we have reasserted our fundamental beliefs. Peace is vital to them all. Today we can look to the future with confidence because we are winning the battle of ideas, and the values in which we believe belong to all generations. Mr. Chairman, people who know me well or listen to me often know that I have a habit of finishing speeches with a quotation from one of my favorite poets. I did so when I spoke to an American audience just 10 days ago in London, and I was asked if I would use the same quotation again this evening. It is from Rudyard Kipling. It is appropriate for everything in which we believe. Keep ye the law. Be swift in all obedience. Clear the land of evil. Drive the road and bridge the ford. Make ye sure to each his own, that he reap where he hath sown. By the peace among our peoples, let men know we serve the Lord.